Omotọlani did not knock. She pushed the gate open with both hands and walked straight into Adewale's compound like a woman who had nothing left to lose, because she didn't. Her wrapper was tight around her waist, her belly round and undeniable beneath her blouse, and her eyes carried the kind of stillness that comes after a person has already cried every tear their body could produce. She had rehearsed nothing. She had brought only the truth. Adewale was standing near the veranda talking on his phone when he saw her. His face changed, not into guilt, into something colder, irritation. He ended the call slowly, slid the phone into his pocket, and looked at her the way a man looks at something he wishes would disappear. Omotọlani, his voice was flat. What are you doing here? You know what I am doing here. She stepped closer. Adewale, this child is yours. You know it, I know it, and if you make me stand in this compound and say it louder, I will. He exhaled through his nose and lowered his voice. Keep that down. My mother is inside. Then go and call her. Let her hear it too. Something flashed in his eyes. Not love, not remorse, just the calculation of a man managing a situation. He walked toward her slowly, and when he spoke, his voice was almost gentle, which was worse. Omotọlani, listen to me. I don't know what you think happened between us, but I cannot claim something I am not sure of. You need to go home. She stared at him. The compound was quiet. A lizard ran across the wall. Somewhere inside the house, a television was playing. She had loved this man. She had sat in this same compound and let him hold her hand and tell her she was the only woman he had ever felt peace with. She had believed every single word. You told me you loved me, she said quietly. He said nothing. You came to my mother's stall every evening for 4 months. You brought me to meet your friends. You put a ring on my finger in front of your cousin and told him I was the one. Her voice cracked on the last word, but she pulled it back. Adewale, I have a letter from the hospital. This child is real. I am real. What we had was real. What we had, he said carefully, is over. And that child, he looked at her stomach with an expression she would never forget for the rest of her life, is something I cannot be responsible for. I don't know who else you have been seeing. If the ground had opened under her feet in that moment, she would not have been surprised. The words landed like a slap across every soft place inside her. She pressed her lips together. Her hands found her stomach on their own, both palms flat against the child growing there, as if to shield him from the sound of his own father's voice. She did not scream. She did not beg. She looked at Adewale for a long moment, memorizing exactly who he was. And then she turned and walked out of his compound the same way she had entered, with both hands pushing the gate wide open. If you are watching this story for the first time, pause right now and subscribe so you never miss any of our stories. Hit the like button too, because this one is going to change the way you see rejection forever. Now, go back 2 years. Omotọlani was 26 years old, teaching primary 4 at Blessed Morning School in their small Yoruba town outside Ibadan. She was not the most beautiful woman in town, but she had something that made people look, a kind of warmth that moved with her, the way she laughed with her whole face, the way she remembered every child's name by the second day of term. After school, she would change out of her uniform blouse and go help her mother Abeke at their small roadside stall. They sold fried plantain, zobo, and whatever vegetables were in season. It was a humble life, but it was full. Mother and daughter talking and laughing while they worked, counting their day's earnings together in the lamplight, sharing one plate of rice because there was only enough for one. Then Adewale appeared. He came the first time in a clean white agbada and said he wanted a bottle of zobo. Abeke served him. He paid and left. He came back the next day and the day after. By the second week, he was coming every evening and staying long after he had finished his drink, leaning against the edge of the stall, talking to Omotọlani about everything and nothing. He was funny. He was attentive. He asked about her students and actually listened when she answered. He brought small things, a bag of ground nuts, a wrapper fabric he said reminded her of, a novel he thought she would like. Abeke watched him with the careful eye of a mother who has seen charm before, but even she softened when he started calling her Mama and helping them pack up the store before he left each evening. 3 months in, he kissed Omotọlani behind the school fence on a Tuesday evening after he walked her home. It was slow and warm and tasted like the promise of something safe. She held his face in her hands and he whispered against her lips that he had never met anyone like her. She laughed softly and pressed her forehead to his. Neither of them moved for a long time. By the 4th month, he had spoken to his cousin about her and brought her to a small family gathering where he held her hand the entire evening and introduced her as his future. He placed a simple gold ring on her finger in front of everyone there, and his cousin raised a glass and said God had finally given Adewale sense. The whole room laughed. Omotọlani laughed too, her cheeks burning, her heart full in a way she had never known before. That was the beginning, and like all beginnings that feel too perfect, it did not survive long enough to become the middle. The morning Omotọlani and Abeke dressed to go to Adewale's family compound, Abeke ironed her best Ankara blouse without a word. She did not ask her daughter again if she was sure. She had asked once the night before, and Omotọlani had shown her the hospital letter and said, "Mama, I am not going there to beg. I am going there to make sure he cannot later say he did not know." Abeke had nodded and gone to bed. This morning, she simply ironed, packed the letter into a small envelope, and tied her head wrap with the kind of precision a woman reserves for battle. They arrived at the compound at 10 a.m. Iyobo, Adewale's mother, received them in the sitting room. She was a large woman with a heavy gold necklace and the kind of face that had long ago decided it did not need to be kind to people it considered beneath it. She gestured toward the chairs without warmth and called for Adewale. He appeared from the corridor. He looked at Omotọlani and then at his mother, and Omotọlani could see in the shift of his shoulders that whatever version of himself that loved her or pretended to was entirely gone. He had already decided what he would say. He probably decided the moment he saw her belly growing. Abeke placed the hospital letter on the center table without preamble. "Our daughter is carrying your son's child," she said directly to Iyobo. "We are not here for trouble. We are here because what is known should be acknowledged." Iyobo did not even look at the letter. She looked at Adewale. "Mommy," he cleared his throat, "I already told you, I don't know anything about this." Omotọlani's jaw tightened. She looked at him. "Adewale?" He would not meet her eyes. "Adewale, look at me." He looked at the wall behind her head. Iyobo stood up. Her voice was smooth and final, the voice of a woman accustomed to ending conversations. "My son has said he does not know you in that way. I don't know what arrangement you had with whoever gave you that pregnancy, but it is not my son's concern. You both are welcome to leave the way you came." Abeke rose slowly from her chair. She was smaller than Iyobo by a full head. She tied her wrapper tighter at her waist, looked the woman in the eye and spoke in a voice so quiet that the room had to lean in to hear her.
"The Almighty God who sees the road will judge who walks it with lies. My daughter has done nothing wrong. What you are burying today will rise. It always does." She took Omotọlani's hand. They walked out. Outside the gate, away from the compound, Omotọlani stopped walking. She pressed both hands against her face and her shoulders shook. Abeke stood beside her and said nothing, just placed one hand flat on her daughter's back and kept it there. A motorcycle passed. A child rode a bicycle on the other side of the road. Life continued, indifferent. Omotọlani pulled her hands down, straightened her neck, and kept walking. The town found out within a week. In a small town, truth and rumor arrive at the same time and no one bothers to separate them. Market women clocked their tongues. The woman who sold fabric near the school started a version of the story where Omotọlani had chased Adewale with desperation and invented the pregnancy. A deacon's wife at their church began sitting one row farther from them each Sunday until she was on the other side of the building entirely. The headmaster at Blessed Morning called Omotọlani into his office and said carefully that some parents had raised concerns and perhaps she should consider a leave of absence until things settled. She sat across from him and said, "I am still the same teacher I was last term. My pupils are not failing. If you want to let me go, but I will not take leave for something I have no reason to be ashamed of." He let her stay. Adewale, meanwhile, appeared in the town's weekly newspaper in a photograph at a society dinner in Ibadan. He was standing beside a woman in a coral lace gown, both of them holding champagne flutes and laughing at something off camera. The caption announced his engagement to Sikemi Bangbose, daughter of Chief Bangbose of Ibadan, with the wedding set for the following year. Omotọlani saw the newspaper at a neighbor's house by accident. She put it down, thanked the neighbor for the water she had been offered, and walked home. She tutored 3 children after school that week and used the money to buy calcium tablets the doctor had recommended. The baby came on a Thursday morning in the rainy season. Abeke was there, holding Omotọlani's hand through every hour of it, praying under her breath in Yoruba. When they placed the boy in Omotọlani's arms, he was wrinkled and furious and perfect. She looked at his face for a long time. Then she said quietly, "Your name is Tobi. God is enough." She kissed her forehead and held him against her chest, and in that moment, the compound, the newspaper photograph, the church women, all of it became very small and very far away. But the world did not pause for her joy. Abeke began to complain of chest pains 3 months after Tobi was born. Visits to the clinic, prescriptions that cost more than the store brought in on a good week. Omotọlani's teaching salary stretched until it nearly tore. She reduced her own meals and told her mother she was not hungry when she was. She prayed at night with Tobi sleeping on the mat beside her and asked God not for comfort, but for a way. The way came to her not as an answer from heaven, but as a decision she made herself, sitting on the floor of their small room on a night when the rain was loud on the zinc roof, and Tobi was breathing steadily in his sleep. She had been staring at nothing for a long time when something in her chest simply settled, the way water settles after you stop disturbing it. She would go to Lagos. Not because she was running, she was very clear with herself about that. She was not running from Adewale or from the town's whispers or from anything behind her. She was running towards something, towards a version of her son's life that did not include watching her mother count coins on the floor every evening. She would go, she would build, and she would come back. She told Abeke in the morning. Her mother held her face in both hands for a long time, studying her the way she had studied her a small child, then said, "Go, Tobi and I will be here. Bring back your victory." Omotọlani kissed her mother's cheek, she kissed her son's sleeping face, and packed one bag. Lagos received Omotọlani the way it receives everyone, without a welcome, without a warning, just the immediate press of noise and heat and bodies moving in every direction with urgent purpose. She arrived at the motor park in Ojodu with one bag and the phone number of a woman from her town who rented a room in Mushin to working girls. The room had 3 occupants, including herself, one window that faced a wall, and a ceiling fan that worked only when it felt like it. She paid her share of the rent from the small amount she had saved and went looking for work the next morning. She found a position at a buka in Surulere, washing dishes, serving food, managing the till when the owner needed a break. The pay was low, the hours were long, her feet ached every night. She called Abeke every Sunday without fail and listened to her mother hold the phone close to Tobi's mouth so she could hear whatever sound he was making that week, a new word, a laugh, an attempt at a song he had heard somewhere. She would sit on the edge of the narrow mattress after the call with the phone in her lap and breathe slowly until the ache in her chest settled enough to let her sleep. She was carrying a tray of food to a table one afternoon, 14 months into her time at the buka, when a woman came in for takeaway. She was impeccably dressed in a navy adire suit with gold earrings, the kind of woman who moved through a space and made it briefly more organized just by being in it. The buka owner fussed around her and called her Madame Folashede. Omotọlani was serving a difficult customer at the next table, a man complaining loudly that his pepper soup had too much pepper in it, which she had heard him say on 3 previous visits, each time about a different dish. She set the food down in front of him, looked at him calmly, and said, "Sir, next time you come, I will ask the kitchen to set yours apart from the start. That way you tell us once and we remember. Is that all right?" He blinked, he nodded, he stopped complaining. Folashede Ajimorobi had been watching. She collected her takeaway bag and paused at the door. "What is your name?" Omotọlani told her. "How long have you been working here?" "A little over a year, ma." Folashede opened her bag, removed a card and held it out. "Come and see me. I think you belong somewhere better than this. Come on Thursday morning, 8 o'clock. She left before Omotọlani could find the words to respond. She went on Thursday. Folashede's company occupied 2 floors of a building in Ikeja, a textile and fashion distribution business supplying textile and ready-to-wear clothing to retailers across Lagos and Abuja. She interviewed her for 45 minutes, not about qualifications, but how she thought, how she handled people, how she managed when things went wrong. At the end, she offered her an entry-level office position. Omotọlani accepted before the sentence was finished. She was at her desk before 8 every morning. She learned the inventory system in 2 weeks. She watched how Folashede negotiated with suppliers and started asking quiet questions afterwards. Why that price? Why that supplier over the other one? What made one delivery term better than the other? Folashede noticed. She began answering at length. Then she began including Omotọlani in the conversations themselves. At year 3, Omotọlani led a supplier negotiation alone and brought the unit cost down by 12%. Folashede promoted her to account manager and gave her a raise that allowed her to send more home, pay for Abeke's medication consistently, and start a small savings she did not touch. At year 5, she brought in a retail chain from Abuja that doubled their northern distribution. People in the office had started calling her Auntie Tolani with a particular respect. Not just deference, but the genuine kind. The kind that means they would follow her advice even when no one was watching. 7 years after she arrived in Lagos with 1 bag, Folashade called her into the office on a quiet Friday afternoon and slid a document across the desk. Junior Partnership Agreement, Omotọlani's name typed at the top. She read it twice. Her hands were not entirely steady when she reached for the pen. She called Abeke that night. Her mother cried on the phone and did not try to hide it. In the background, Tobi, 7 years old now, his voice a proper little boy voice, shouted, "Mommy, is it true you are coming home?" And Omotọlani laughed until her eyes were wet. She came home 3 weeks later. The compound looked different. It was because she had sent money for repairs the year before. New roof, fresh paint, a small gate with a proper lock. Abeke was standing in the doorway looking older but straighter than Omotọlani remembered. Tobi came running from somewhere inside the house and threw himself at her with the full confidence of a child who has never doubted that his mother would return. She caught him and held him against her and pressed her face into his neck and stayed there for a moment, just breathing. The town that had whispered greeted her now with wide smiles. The same market women who had clucked their tongues offered her the best cuts of meat and said, "Omo, we knew you would do well." She greeted them all with grace. She had made a decision somewhere in year 4 that she would not carry bitterness back with her. It was too heavy and the journey was too important. She was sitting on the veranda with Tobi one evening, 4 days after her return, when a car stopped outside the compound gate. Adewale stepped out. He was heavier than she remembered, his hair beginning to grey at the temples. Behind him, slower getting out of the car, was Iyabo, smaller now, the gold necklace gone, something in her posture that had not been there before. Adewale spoke first. "Omotọlani, I heard you were back." He paused. "I would like to know my son." Tobi was beside her, watching with curious eyes. She put her hand on his shoulder and looked at Adewale for a long, quiet moment. Then she said, "This boy has not lacked love for 1 day of his life. He has had mine, He has had his grandmother's. He knows exactly who he is and where he belongs. She stood up slowly. You do not get to walk into what you chose to abandon. She went inside. She closed the door softly, not with anger, but with the kind of finality that needs no extra force. Adewale came back the following morning, alone. Iyabo was not with him. He sat on the veranda bench and turned his cap in his hands and said he had rehearsed his speech, but now that he was here, it all seemed wrong. He said he was afraid, that his mother had pressured him and he had been a coward, and that there had not been a year since that he had not thought about what he had done. He did not ask for restoration. He did not try to explain the fear into something forgivable. He just named it plainly and sat with it in the open air. Omotọlani was quiet for a long time. Then she said, I forgave you, Adewale. Not the day you asked for it, a long time ago, because I needed to put it down. I forgave you so I could walk without the weight of your wrong on my back. She looked at him steadily. If you want to be in Tobi's life, that is a conversation for when he is old enough to choose it himself, not today. He nodded. He stood. He looked like a man who had not expected to feel better, and did anyway, slightly, just from having the truth said back to him without cruelty. He left. That evening, Abeke and Omotọlani sat on the veranda together as the sun pulled itself below the rooftops. Tobi was asleep inside, one arm flung over his face the way children sleep when they have no worries. The air smelt like evening, dust and cooked smoke and the faint sweetness of something flowering nearby. Abeke was shelling a wa slowly in her lap. Neither of them spoke for a while. Then Omotọlani said, not loudly, more to herself than to anyone, the door they closed for me was not the end of my house. It was the beginning of one I built with my own hands. Abeke did not respond. She just nodded once, the way a woman nods when something has already been true for a long time and someone has only just found the words for it. If this story moved you, hit the like button right now and leave a comment telling us where in the world you are watching from. We want to hear from you. Subscribe so you never miss a story like this one. New episodes every week, and every one of them was made for someone who needed it today.